Finovate showcases cutting-edge banking and financial technology through a global conference series featuring short-form demos and thought leadership. Now, the conversation continues on the Finovate podcast.
Welcome to the Finovate podcast. Joining me today, we have April Rudin, the founder of the Rudin Group and a frequent Finovate speaker. April, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
Hi, Greg. Thanks for inviting me.
So for those of us who don't know who you are, I can't imagine it's too many. Will you give us a quick overview of your work and what the Rudin Group is all about?
Sure. So I started my firm in 2008, kind of similar to today's times, if you just think about the markets. Not the pandemic, of course, but in 2008, there was a lot of market volatility with brands and firms not yet thinking about how to really differentiate themselves. And my idea was that wealth management firms, banks, insurance companies, financial services firms would really need to differentiate themselves as a result of the intersection of three things, which is transference of wealth, rising next gen and millennial investors and clients, and technology, which is what we're here to talk about today, both wealth tech, fintech, and insurtech. So what we do is we help both startups, scale-ups, and incumbents figure out what their best go-to-market strategy is in terms of messaging, content creation, and distribution of the same.
It's an area certainly where a lot of fintech companies need help. I think historically, fintech as an industry hasn't done a great job of really understanding the best way to sort of sell itself to the community. And I think the work that you've done has really been very helpful for a lot of companies in looking at how they can get their message out there in a way that's compelling and concise. And that is absolutely what we want to talk about today, because I think one of the pieces that we're seeing, obviously generating and maintaining consumer trust has always been vital. It feels like it's more vital now than it ever has been, and really building that trust starts from the way that banks market their digital services to their customers. It starts from the way that fintechs market their services towards banks. I know this is an area where you have a ton of experience. What would you say are the really crucial pieces to keep in mind for banks as they look at their marketing and how they can start that trust journey?
So that's a great question. So banks need to start their trust journey by becoming more authentic and transparent than ever before. In today's pandemic times, where you have bankers and others Zooming and using all sorts of technology, meeting with their clients and showing where they're living, how they're living, can really gain so much valuable information. And I've always objected when people in the past have said, use the phrase institutional marketing, because at the end of the day, it's always people buying services and products from people. So I think the biggest lesson for big banks from this is to be able to make their brand a lot more relatable and bring it down to the people that are really servicing these markets. So bringing out personal brands, using thought leadership to talk about different people at institutions that might be delivering some of these services rather than just, talking about what a big brand are all best practices. On the fintech side, such a thought-provoking question, Greg, and I agree with you. I mean, why aren't fintechs good at marketing, or why do they deprioritize marketing? And I would say that it comes from, a simple truth, which is many fintechs are started by engineers or programmers. And so they're sort of left-brain quantitative people and not really thinking about marketing and thinking that if they can bring their product to market and show it to people, that they'll buy it. And as we know, that doesn't usually happen. So I think the biggest lesson for fintechs that they need to learn, especially in these sort of pandemic times, is marketing, and spend as much money as you can getting your brand out there and letting people know what you solve for. So I think the big move in fintech marketing is away from product marketing and more to solving pain points.
I think there's a couple of really interesting pieces to highlight there. Certainly, looking at people as people and looking at creating an authentic connection, an emotional connection with them, and really looking at how you can help them solve a pain point, I think is a really great way to approach things. It's something that we talk about for companies coming to Finovate a lot. Reaching out to the audience as individuals, as people, getting them personally excited is something that is not always second nature to a lot of fintech companies. And so we see people who sort of say, I've got the best product, I'm guaranteed to win because look at it, it's the best. But that's not always the way that the cookie ends up crumbling. And so there are certainly great fintech products that end up kind of languishing on the sidelines because they're not ever able to create that buzz, that excitement, that personal connection. And so I think that's a really great piece to highlight. Now, I want to kind of approach this from the other side, which might be a little bit more fun, might be something good to listen to. But are there any big mistakes that you are consistently seeing banks making that things that just kind of drive you nuts? You're like, come on, we should be past this by now.
So I guess it's sort of the one size fits all marketing. It's almost like that old brochure that we're used to seeing, or even that marketing folder that has the brochures in it. So I think the lesson or the takeaway big banks should be embracing now is that there's not one size fits all, and they shouldn't be over segmenting. And let me explain what I mean. So there are lots of different buyers out there, and I feel like it's a mistake to say, here is our millennial product. Here is our women's product. Here's our product for our retirees. I think it's better for brands and firms to put forth many different entry points and just, Greg, let the people choose what they want. Big mistake, that over segmentation.
It's interesting because obviously there's a huge amount of fintech is dedicated to finding clean data on customers and using that data to offer highly personalized recommendations. And we know that that is something which consumers tend to respond well to. This idea that my bank knows me, they understand where I'm at, and they can recommend products that are really for me. At the same time, though, you highlighted another side of it, which is making sure that they have choice. They have the agency to go and search and find the products that they want. And these are really two different aspects that are both vital from a marketing standpoint, giving your customers the ability to find products themselves and to search and make it really easy for them to find those products, while also recommending specific things that you are able to recommend because you have this data on them, that you know some things about them, and sometimes even in cases that they might not know themselves. And so we've talked a little bit about the way that coronavirus has kind of shaped things. Has it really changed the equation dramatically? I mean, the pieces that you're talking about right now are somewhat similar, I think, to the answers you probably would have given 6 months ago, 12 months ago. But has there been any big disruptions or big changes in kind of these fundamental best practices?
So I would say no, with the exception of going digital, right? The most important thing is, what does your digital footprint look like and how can people interact with it? So there certainly is a lot of data on customer behavior, but I think the mistake is that when people use a lens to look at customer behavior and sort of route it into those segments, that's what really turns out poorly for them, rather than simply saying, we need these four different entry points, Greg, right? Like some people like to come into a branch, some people like to interact with a chatbot. Without saying, right, that boomers like to come into a branch. I think that's where people really go wrong. So I think the data's there, but I think it's a way that we think about the data. And what the pandemic has really brought on in terms of marketing is the opportunity to simply be more authentic and to put marketing in the hands of people, right, as being representative of big banks and wealth management firms, rather than simply happening at an enterprise level or home office. And that's good for everyone.
Oh, I think the illustration of this that kind of jumps immediately to my mind that kind of ties a bunch of things we've talked about together here. You see banks who will put statements out there along the lines of, we're all in this together. We're here for you. We're happy to help. And there are financial institutions where you read that message and you think that really rings true. I believe you. That sounds, understanding your work in the community. And then there are other financial institutions where you read that and you think that sounds so cynical. It sounds so crass. It sounds so inauthentic because of the customer service that you provide. And people who have these horror stories of, I was on the phone forever trying to get customer service. You're clearly not in it with me. And so I think that is there a danger in kind of trying to go too quickly to get to that right messaging before you get to the place where you can make it authentically? I think a lot of companies right now are scared to move because they don't want to be called out as inauthentic, but maybe they should be prioritizing the message at the same time as building out to make sure that it actually resonates.
There's a lot, I'd like to unpack that, Greg. There's a lot packed into that statement question, right? So it's hard to go from being, a big global brand to all of a sudden we're in this together. you've got to demonstrate that. You can't just say it, and those words can be empty without actually showing it. I did a webinar not long ago with Dipti Chaudhry from JP Morgan, and JP Morgan produced the best, craziest, awesome TV commercial. I'm not sure if you saw it, and it was produced in less than 10 days. And they were able to produce it using financial advisors speaking from home on Zoom themselves. So it brought the authentic voice of the advisor, which would obviously be able to translate for banks as well. And because there's no recording studio anymore, right? And it had to be done from home. It was just assembled together with everyone. Instead of saying that we're in it together, Greg, they demonstrated that they're in it together. It was very powerful to see all of those different people just on a Zoom call. And they used that for, national broadcast TV.
I think that's a great idea. And I haven't seen that commercial, but obviously you're talking to somebody who really believes in the power of the demo over the power of saying, that's sort of Finovate's entire background. But I think that, we're at a point right now where the field has really been leveled to some extent because we're all just at home in front of our computers on Zoom, and a lot of the kind of flashy pieces which were available, big budget commercials and big budget marketing strategies are sort of by the wayside. And now it really is kind of back to the basics, back to the fundamentals. Is your messaging on point? Are you able to authentically say we're in it with you? Are you able to bring your staff on board with the mission? And so I think there's a lot of pressure right now on organizations to build that authenticity, but clearly there's a reward for people who are able to do it well. So I'd like to, and we're just about out of time here, but I want to just kind of turn it over to you for final thoughts on any kind of thing you really wish you would see more of coming out of both financial institution marketing or fintech marketing to financial institutions. Just some nice kind of positive hope for the future type of statement.
So I guess I'd like to see things that are really more authentic. So rather than relying on cliches and stock photos and images of what we think people want to see, I think for the big banks, they have the opportunity to be much more authentic. They can use their own employees for employee advocacy programs. How people are treating their employees today might be the best marketing tool that they've had. Are they requiring them to come back to work? What does the workplace look like? I mean, don't forget that these messages, right, are playing like commercials and reverberating in every single market around the country. And I guess, so I think it's all about your employees and how they are portraying your brand when it's not coming from your home office. In terms of fintechs, what do I wish they would do for marketing? I wish that they would go professional and leave it to the experts and not do it yourself. If they want to be successful, make a budget and go for it.
No, I think that's neither of those answers is 100% surprising given your background. But I think, looking at it from that standpoint of everything that you do as an organization right now has the potential to further your brand's messaging. Every decision that your boardroom makes can become a positive source of attention out in the marketplace. And then from a fintech standpoint, I think you're absolutely spot on. It's something where, if you as a fintech struggle with this, if you're not getting the desired results, there are people out there who do have expertise, who can share that expertise. And just like I wouldn't try and code something myself, I would go find a friend who knows more about it than me. The flip side is also true. The marketing professionals do know quite a bit, and there's a lot of experience there to draw from. So, April, thank you again so much for taking the time. This has been a very interesting conversation. We'll see who comes out of this, I suppose, who is able to create this impression, this authenticity, these messages, and resonate. And I'm sure you'll be eagerly watching right along with me.
I will. So thanks so much. It was great catching up with you, Greg. And I look forward to, quote unquote, seeing you at Finovate Fall.
The Finovate podcast is produced by Informa Connect in association with Provoke.fm Media. Check out Finovate.com for information on Finovate's upcoming shows and to learn how you can get involved. The discount code Finovate Podcast will save you 20% on tickets to all of our events. And you can email us at info@finovate.com for information on sponsoring, speaking, or demoing. Thanks for listening.